Ryan Holiday is a marketing director for American Apparel, and he wanted to prove a point about how the media doesn't do a good enough job fact-checking, and they'll literally have anyone on as an expert without looking into the background of that individual. So basically, he did this experiment, and there's this free service. It's known as Help a Reporter Out. I haven't used it personally, but apparently it's where you go, if you're part of the media, you go there looking for experts on a specific topic. Anyway, he said, I knew that bloggers would print anything, so I thought, what if, as an experiment, I tried to prove that they will literally print anything? Instead of trying to get press to benefit myself, I just wanted to get any press for any reason as a joke. So, as a result, Reuters used him as a source for a story called Generation Yikes. So they were talking about, the current generation and some of the struggles they're going through. ABC News used him as an expert for long-suffering insomniacs. CBS used him for an embarrassing office story. MSNBC used him as someone who was sneezed on while he was working at Burger King. And that website that I can't pronounce used him to offer helpful tips for winterizing your boat. By the way, he knows nothing about boats at all.
Or being sneezed on at Burger King.
What a compelling story, MSNBC.
And a pizza on now, look,
expose on getting sneezed on at Burger King.
Now the thing is, I feel conflicted about this. One, we should pat ourselves on the back because we actually thought about having that guy on when we were doing the story on the Olympic apparel, and here's American Apparel that sells clothes made in the US, and it was perfectly relevant to the story, but our producers said, that guy's sketchy.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely, right.
But so that's the one thing he probably wouldn't have been
he actually
sketchy
did
about.
have the expertise on. That's the ironic part, right? Now, but having said that, look, I feel kind of bad for the reporters. How many vinyl record experts are there? And if he's in a database of vinyl record experts, are they supposed to triple check that?
Well, and the guy who interviewed him for the vinyl record story said, I don't know, he sounded legit. I interviewed a few people about vinyl records. He seemed to know what he was talking about. And why would somebody lie about something so mundane as vinyl record collecting?
Right.
And that's the real issue. Obviously, as a science reporter, I have to fact check all the time. But I also have something of a bullshit detector. And you know what? I can just look up and see, oh yes, this guy really is a professor at this university, and that's who I'm interviewing. But I mean, why would somebody lie about that?
Being sneezed on a Burger King, how would you even double check that?
But it happens on a larger scale too. These are ridiculous stories that no one cares about anyway. Okay, so the source is lying about vinyl records. No one's gonna get harmed by that. Unless you collect vinyl records and you're offended. And
that's the issue. But should we be making this into something bigger? Is this, symptomatic of a larger problem?
But or it is a larger problem because these might be stupid stories, but then you have let's say the mainstream media or something, right? You'll have the mainstream media, for instance, that'll hire an expert or book an expert to talk about some sort of political event. And it's complete.
But it's easier to vet those people.
To me, that's 10 times, 100 times, a million times bigger problem when they bring on, let's say, a scientist who's funded by the oil industry.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
Right, but they don't say that he's from the oil industry. Or what happens all the time, they bring on a former general who's actually now working for defense contractors, and he talks about how great those defense contractors are and how we need to start a war using those defense contractors' weapons. So that's a real issue. But the guy getting sneezed on at Burger King, who cares? And by the way, he actually out-douched himself because now that everybody knows Ryan Holiday is trying to trick the press, he's not going to be able to get real press for American Apparel, which is kind of what happened to him with us because we knew that he was a questionable dude. We didn't have him on a thing he actually was an expert on and could have helped his own company with.
But what does he care? He's making way more money on book sales now.